Get this, adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Wondery. Greenlight.com/Wondery.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
In 1973, the New York City Police Department created a hostage negotiation team.
He's not up against the gun. He's up against the man's mind.
When you're defusing a human bomb, it's the same as when you're taking apart a real bomb. If you skip a step, it's going to blow up right in your face.
Talk to Me tells the high-stakes true story of the world's first hostage negotiation team. It changed policing forever. Talk to Me.
We're here in the matter of the United States of America versus...
is a collect call from a person presumed nice until proven naughty.
Y'all, Santa Claus is locked up, and I'm gonna get him out. My name's Richie Buck. I'm an amateur podcaster and investigator. I'm an Investapodster. I came up with that. If you like true crime, feelings of the holidays, and I ain't just talking about Christmas, and satire, well, Santa May Be a Criminal just might be for you. Some of your favorite true crime podcasters have joined in to spin this yarn.
I'm Chet. If the mitten ain't a fitting.
Can you tell who's who?
Stop acting like
and is Santa a criminal? Let's find out together.
Hunt down Santa.
Santa May Be a Criminal. Listen and subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Got run over by a reindeer.
Ho, ho, ho. I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, we reflect on the year that's been. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my Old Lang Syne co-host, Alice.
Who are you calling old?
It's old, not old.
I'm just messing with you. Because I am feeling old today.
You're getting up there, Alice.
Hey. You know what the beauty of our friendship is, though? As I get older, you're going to stay the same amount of older than me.
True.
So there you go.
That's true. That's a good point.
But I do love that because obviously we're in the holiday season. But you know what? I also love the turn of the new year. It's like filled with hope. Everything is, fresh and new. You have all these great, hopes and dreams for the next year, and nothing's been ruined yet.
Yeah, I feel like it's a sign of your eternal optimism. I feel the same way, that this next year, it's a new year, it's going to be great. You know how at the end of the year, you're at work and you're always putting stuff off till the new year and it seems so far away and then all of a sudden it's there? That's the only bad thing about the new year. But, hey, new year 2023.
There you go. Oh, my gosh. I thought we were still in 2020. What is happening? Oh, Well, I don't know. 2023. That number seems almost fake to me because I don't know what happened to 2021 and certainly don't know what happened to 2022.
2023 is the year of the rabbit, by the way. I don't know what that means, but if you're into horoscopes, it's rabbit time.
Or the lunar zodiacs.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true. I'm a tiger, so unless it's a year of a tiger, then
tiger,
which it matches, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm
very much a tiger. I know. I used to hate it.
I'm a rooster.
Rooster. My brother is a rooster.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Roosters are supposed to be wise. Good job.
Is that right?
I mean, I don't know
anything about it. Just, being a chicken is like, I'd much rather be a tiger or a dragon.
I mean,
at least I'm not like a rat or a pig. No offense to those who are rats or pigs.
My son is a pig, so, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
But with all that, one of the things I do love about the turn of a new year is getting to look on the past year because you get to reflect on it how you want to, right? If you only want to remember the good stuff, you can do that. If you only want to remember the bad stuff, I don't know why you want to, you can do that too. But I think it's really helpful for me to look back and, I don't know, do you journal? I like to journal. And
I've always tried and failed. I wish I did. I really wish I did.
It might be because you write so much already, so you may not benefit from journaling. But yeah, I love doing this. And I'm glad we're doing this kind of look back on the podcast because we are entering year 3. Is that possible? 2, 3? We're like old hat at this point.
I guess May will be our 3rd anniversary, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot to we've grown a lot, I think, as podcasters and people.
I can't believe we've been doing this for 3 years. I mean, it's just insane. It's just wild.
Entire life of my younger son.
I know. Exactly. My daughter was I don't know.
3 months old.
8 months old when we started this or something. And then my son, like you said, wasn't even born. I don't know. Well, it's kind of like this podcast is like my journal. You mentioned journaling.
Yeah.
I feel like I have lived so many people out there who are listening to this. And this, by the way, if you came here for true crime, today is just us babbling about the last year. So see you next year if you actually want to hear about a case. We're going to talk about cases, but cases we've already covered.
We get to do this, though, because we never take off a single week in the entire year. I don't really know of anyone else who doesn't take off a single day.
No, we sure don't. And this time last year, we were getting ready for our trial, and we recorded like crazy. You remember how much we recorded?
We recorded in
December of last year?
2 episodes a night, back-to-back nights, for 2 or 3 weeks, all throughout Christmas. It was
because we just didn't know.
It was crazy.
We knew the trial was going to last a month, but we just didn't know. The weeks before the trial, we were driving all over the world. We were interviewing witnesses. That was a crazy time.
That was
a crazy time.
I'm really glad we're not situationally there anymore.
Yeah. Though that was a joy, Alice. That was one of the highlights of my professional career, trying that case with you. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I
getting
did.
to try the case with you and, taking daily COVID tests was definitely...
That's true. Did we tell people about that we had to take a COVID test every single day?
I don't think so. Now that we're a year removed,
rough.
we had to take a COVID test every single morning, which some of you may have to do that for your jobs, but you're already so wound up about trial, and then to have to build in that extra 30 minutes on top of getting ready for your trial and really hoping and praying that the COVID test doesn't turn positive as you're walking into the courtroom was an added layer of stress. I'm not going to lie.
It was. And all our witnesses had to take one too.
Everyone who spoke. We went through a lot of COVID tests. And if you guys don't remember, that was the height of shortages of COVID tests. So it's not like they were easily accessible at the pharmacy. In fact, no one could get them. So it was kind of a day by day, are we going to have enough COVID tests? Is anyone going to be positive? What happens if it's positive? So that was a lot.
And the only person who got COVID the whole time was our witness coordinator.
No, poor guy.
Which makes you wonder about all those negative tests that we got, because none of our witnesses tested positive. We never tested positive. I mean, it was kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
That we made it through. But we did. And the podcast just kept going. That was the middle of John Bonet. Did the whole John Bonet thing while we were trying that case.
Gosh. Oh my goodness. John Bonet feels like it was yesterday and a lifetime ago.
I know, doesn't it? It really does. This year kind of flew, was my feeling.
Well, the different judges I've worked for will do updates for our whole clerk family, that sort of thing. And I was writing all the updates from this year. It sounds crazy, right? Like, had a 4-week trial. We got convictions, got a promotion, left my job for the first time, in like a decade, started a new job. And it was just like ups and downs, and traveled to Alaska and back. And I was like, was this 1 year?
I know. And that's what this is. This year in review. So we wanted you guys to give you a little update on how the show's going. And then we're going to talk about our favorite episodes that we did this year. We'd love to hear your favorite episodes. So feel free to shoot us an email or something. We'd love to hear you guys and what you think about the show and how it's doing and where we're at. Just some stats for those of you who like stats. I know some of y'all are really into stats. So we always like to share them with you.
I love stats so much.
Stats are great. Stats are great. So as you know, Alice and people out there, we crossed 10 million downloads in October. So that was a big milestone. Yay, Alice. Good job. It was all
Brett.
you, I'm
Yay,
sure.
Brett.
If it weren't for me, we'd probably be at 15 million. But whatever. And by the end of the year, we'll have had around 9 million downloads this year alone. So that should tell you.
Seriously?
Yeah, that should tell you how the podcast has been growing.
Wow.
10 million in October, but 9 million for the whole year.
Sorry, I'm not pretending on these stats. I know our stats, but I forget them. And so it's like a brand new revelation every time I learn about them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I couldn't be happier with how the show's going. And we were talking to some folks from Podcast One yesterday, and I think it just goes without saying, and we're not just saying this to make you guys happy, but this is all y'all. We don't do a lot of advertising. It really is you guys telling your friends, spreading the word, leaving reviews. And we hear from so many of you who tell your friends, and we really appreciate that. And the proof's in the pudding. The show is growing because of you. We will keep doing it as long as you guys want to hear it. And hopefully it'll keep growing. I guess if it ever stops growing, we'll know that we're not doing a good job anymore and people will stop telling their friends. But some more stats. So top countries. Obviously, the United States is number one. Alice, do you have a guess for what the second biggest country is for us?
Is there any chance it's Australia because of The Lady Vanishes?
It is not Australia.
UK.
It is the UK.
Awesome.
So 81% of our listeners are in the United States, but a strong 5% are in the United Kingdom. So
amazing.
Thank you guys.
I think it's the royal family.
Yeah, I think it probably is. It probably is. They probably issued a decree or something that people had to listen to our show. So hello, Prince William, Kate. You guys are awesome. Tell your dad I said hi. So Canada is number 3, 3.7%. Then Australia at 3.3%.
That's still a pretty strong showing.
It is a strong showing. And then there's a pretty big drop between Australia and number 5, which is Germany.
Germany.
Yeah.
Coming in strong. Maybe because of our Hinter Kaifek episode.
Maybe. And I don't know that I've ever heard from anybody from Germany. So
write us.
Write us. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys.
We'll use Google
we hear
Translate.
From people who speak German on occasion. But I don't know that any of them are actually from Germany. So looking forward to that. Alice, do you want to guess what the top state is?
Is it my wonderful Texas?
It is Texas by far. Everything's bigger in Texas.
Texas.
Including the podcast, apparently. We're at 9% of our listeners are in Texas.
That is so many.
Yes, that is so many.
Thanks, Texans, fellow Texans. It's because we know quality when we see it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you to Texas and all your support. Number 2 is California, which isn't that surprising either.
Awesome.
At 6%. Then it's Florida at 4%, Georgia at 3.9%, and then Ohio, OH, at 3.5%.
Way to go, Ohio.
So, yeah. Do you want to guess our top city?
It changes, I know, and I know it's within Texas. I'm going to go with Dallas.
Interestingly, and I don't know what the time period is for this, because like you said, it does change. I think it's probably the last 90 days. It is Chicago.
Chicago, a shocker.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Chicago, Illinois, followed closely by Houston, Texas.
Way to go, Houston.
Then Rossville, Georgia. Then Fort Worth, Texas. Then Atlanta, Georgia. Then Austin, Texas. Then Sydney, New South Wales, which I hear is a state, not a province.
You got corrected
and then
on that.
Dallas. Yeah, I know. So Dallas,
Maybe
Dallas
they're
has
slacking.
been number 1, and they've fallen all the way to like 10. So maybe we've insulted Dallas.
Maybe they
Sorry,
haven't
Dallas.
fallen, but the other cities have risen to the occasion.
Oh, that's a possibility, too. So Dallas needs to catch up, is what you're saying. If you're in
There you
Dallas, you need to
go.
start telling more friends, because Dallas is a little slacking over there.
Thought I had friends there.
Thought you did, too. So those are the stats for those of you who care about such things. If you want to know, the central time zone in the United States is where most of the people who listen to the show are. 40%. So I don't know why that is. I guess
They even
Texas
break
is
it
in Central
down
Time.
by time zone?
They do. So it's Central Time, then Eastern Time.
Okay.
Then Pacific Time. Then, interestingly, Greenwich Mean Time before Mountain Time.
Really?
So mountain folk just don't like our style, I guess.
Well, actually, I was going to say.
And we've done all these Colorado cases.
Well, very
Come on,
few
mountain
people live in that area. So the fact that that's even ranked, I think, is impressive. Maybe I'm the optimism. The optimism.
Maybe. I think you just insulted everybody in Mountain Time.
No,
I think you're civilized. I don't think you're a bunch of hillbillies. That's what
I
Alice
didn't
is saying.
say they weren't civilized. I said not as many people live in that time zone. Just like Central Time. That's interesting that that's number 1 because I would think the coasts have more population than Central Time.
Is Greenwich Mean Time, is that just Britain?
I have no idea. I'm looking it up right now.
Because
it's
yeah,
it is 6
ignorant
hours.
Americans here.
6 hours ahead of us.
Oh, it's like Britain.
Wait,
and
can we
West
tell
Africa?
folks? I mean, we've told some people in our Zooms, like our Patreons, but the reason these cities and states matter is that we're kind of toying with the idea of maybe going to a couple of these cities and doing live shows and recording with you guys in the audience. And I think it makes sense if we know that like a lot of people in a city are listening to us. So maybe that's a call to boost your city so that we'll put it on the list of places to visit in the great 2023.
Yeah, if you're in Georgia or Texas, you may see our smiling faces at some point if you want to.
If you want.
If we can,
We would love
figure
that.
out the logistics of it. There are many things in our lives they constantly interrupt.
It's hard when you have like other jobs and kids.
I know.
Man.
It's a real life thing. It's just interfering with the podcast. It would be so much easier to do the podcast if we didn't have anything else to do.
This is true.
But yeah, I did have a trial in January, but it got continued to April.
Oh, is that
So
right?
we'll see if it happens in April.
Okay.
Yeah. The judge said in the order, no more continuances. So
Let's
we're going
see.
to trial in April.
Let's see.
We're supposed to go into trial last January in this one.
That's a long time. That's a pretty long continuance. But
Yeah.
it
did
shows
you see the Delphi case got continued, by the way?
I did see that. And also, it goes along with what we've said all along that trials rarely go when they're first set because it takes a lot of work to get actually ready for a trial.
Right. Oh, yeah. And
So
that
much
one.
work. That one is going to be, whoo.
Yeah. Good luck. We're not seeing that one in 2023. That's my bet.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So mark your calendars for 2024 if you're looking for that trial, if it goes to trial.
I don't know. I kind of think
see.
it will.
I kind of think it might. I
think it-
didn't think it would, but now I'm kind of like,
I think it might because for a number of reasons. Obviously, the defense, and we're not turning this into a Delphi podcast, but obviously the defense will get all of the discovery. But I think even with the layperson response, and the defense has the benefit of hearing what a lot of people on Reddit and online have to hear, which doesn't always happen with your cases, right? You usually have to hire jury consultants and you test cases to hear how your theories play out. But like so many people have weighed in on the internet about what they think of the probable cause affidavit that the defense has like a pretty large echo chamber if they want to go find it of people who are like, this isn't enough. And so whether that sways them or not, at least it may affect the defendant himself. Because usually as the defendant, you don't hear like other people who don't know you in the internet world talking about how you might get off at trial, So
Right.
I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
No, it's true. It's like you said, it's a free echo chamber, free jury consulting.
I'm not
free
saying they're correct.
polling.
I'm just saying that you hear things that you otherwise typically wouldn't hear, whether it's incorrect or correct.
Yeah, I find the whole thing fascinating. I've been fascinated by people's reactions. I mean, basically, and we're not going to turn this into a Delphi, but nevertheless, basically to believe it's not him, you have to believe that there were 2 people in that area at the exact same time who looked exactly the same, who were wearing exactly the same thing, yet
Yeah.
one of them kidnapped and killed the girls. The other one didn't see or hear anything because he was looking at the fish
With his gun.
100 feet down in the muddy river. Yeah, with his gun. And you just have to believe that. Even without the bullet, even if you think the bullet stuff is not strong, which I actually think it is. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny to me that people think it's weak because I actually don't think it's weak at all. I assume they have more.
I totally agree with you. I was surprised that so many people thought it was weak, and I think part of that is just echo chambers. Like you haven't actually been in trial and know, like, I think this is a misunderstanding of what reasonable doubt is. But again, we're already, this is what happens. We might go into some of our favorite things that have happened in 2022 podcast wise.
Well, I mean,
what's developing here is big.
That was the biggest news in podcasting, right? Yeah. The Delphi news was, actually, if you think about it, there was huge news in 2022. So you had the Delphi case breaking, which, you thought it might never be solved.
Right.
You thought, this might be a case that is never going to be solved, and yet it was. Or, I don't put the cart before the horse, but big step was made, obviously. Brandon Lawson, another case you never thought would be solved. They found his remains, and I think pretty much that closes the case on that. All the conspiracy theories are wrong. He wasn't kidnapped. He wasn't killed by the police. He wasn't killed by drug dealers. He wandered into the wilderness and died, which happens a lot. It happens more than people want to realize. And then the Moab murders were solved. We did an episode on that, and it wasn't a month later that they figured out who did it. It was a guy who had killed himself and had worked at the McDonald's and had some negative interactions with one of the ladies over the fact that he felt like the manager was benefiting her more than him. Stupid stuff, right? I'd still like to see more about that case. I'm surprised there wasn't more reporting on that when they discovered that. A lot of y'all out there may not even know that. We talked about it on Legal Briefs, which is our other podcast, but we didn't really talk about it on here. That's another thing. We started Legal Briefs.
Oh my gosh.
That was another big event
kidding.
in 2022.
Can you believe that? We started a second podcast. And we didn't just start it, but it's like people are listening to it.
I know.
Yeah,
people are listening to it.
Can you give us stats on the other podcast?
Sure, I can do that if that's what you want. Alice.
Maybe other people don't want, but I want all the statistics. I want all the facts.
You want all the statistics. So when did Legal Briefs start? It started back in June?
March. It was not at the beginning of the year. You're right, because we were still coming out of trial at that point.
Right, exactly. I think
was it the summer?
June.
Okay, you're right. It took us a little bit of time. Like we decided to do it, and then we stagnated for a little bit because we were still recovering from trial.
Right.
I can't believe we started a podcast after our trial. Who are we?
I know.
Have we slept?
It was really Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's fault.
Because
everybody wanted us to talk about it, and we were like, well, if everybody wants to just talk about it, I guess we'll talk about it. So the Legal Briefs, which is, as Alice said, or I guess as I said, started in June. Our first episode was released May 31st. So
okay.
Basically. And we've had about 400,000 downloads this year.
Wow.
On that, which is great. And let's see, our most popular episode is the Adnan Syed episode we did.
That was controversial.
Yes, by all the various Delphi things we've done. So, yeah, it's going great. If you're not listening to it, you should. I think some people think, and I completely understand why you would think this, that it's us being really nerdy, which it is. There's a lot of us being really nerdy. But we also talk about some interesting stuff. We talk about cases. So if you're interested in Delphi, we tend to talk about Delphi on Legal Briefs more than we do here, because in here we're still trying to keep this to the true crime stories, cases, mysteries, series, that kind of thing.
If we cover like trials in real time, it's going to be over at Legal Briefs. So if you have anything that's in the news that you're interested in hearing about, we can just turn those around faster than we can these episodes. So just so you know how we work, because there's usually more reactionary to something that's happening in the news and less kind of in-depth investigative research. So if you want to know, like you see something on the news and you're like, what does that mean? Email us, and then we'll probably try to drop an episode that Friday for you about it.
So interestingly, in Legal Briefs, the top cities, Chicago is still the top city, But the second city is Sydney. Sydney comes in number 2 on Legal Briefs. So
they are interested
those
in
of you
the
down
law.
in Australia, exactly. Discerning taste. Some really intelligent listeners we have down in Australia, followed by Houston, Texas. And then as far as states go, it's Texas, California, Florida. But Georgia's not on the list. Indiana and Illinois come in 4th and 5th, which I assume is because of Delphi, because we do so much Delphi conversation on there, but that's where that comes from. So those are the stats. We also wanted to talk about some of our favorite episodes that we've done and why. So, Alice, do you want me to start or do you want to start? We're going to do our top 3. Though, if you want to say more than 3, you can say more than 3, Alice. I'm not going to hold you to that.
You can start.
Okay, well, the one I'll start with is episode 4 of John Bonet. So we did that whole 9-episode arc on John Bonet. Ended up being 10 if you count.
I was going to say it's more like 10.
It's always one more. You know, we always end up doing that every time we do one. But episode 4, I think, was the one where we talked about the ransom note.
Oh, that was a good one.
And that was one of my most favorite episodes we've ever recorded. I just enjoyed that so much. Going through the language and sort of where a lot of it came from and the movie quotes and all that stuff. I just really enjoyed that. And I feel like people responded to that. You know, we're going back to stats. If you look at our top episodes of all time, they're all John Bonet. They're all John Bonet episodes. You know, we'll see if one day some of the other episodes can overtake them. And they may, because honestly, the show is so much bigger than it was when we did John Bonet that I think it's only a matter of time until the John Bonet episodes fall away, particularly as we start doing more big cases, which we're going to do some big cases next year. So all of you have been asking for them. You're going to get them.
Yeah, I forgot that John Bonet, we had a much smaller listenership at that point. And it's been really awesome to have people who've joined our listenership go back and listen to our backlog and give us their reactions to cases that we covered a while ago, because they're not top of mind for me. And so when we have our new listeners, binge older episodes like John Bonet and come back with their really good insights, I'm like, we are only going to get so much better moving forward because we'll get those insights in real time as we drop the episodes. And we really feed off of you guys. It's so helpful to have your insights. So I'm kind of excited about that, thinking going forward with such a larger listener base and all the real time responses we'll have to kind of these longer serial cases that we cover each year.
It is funny though, because people will ask me questions about Elisa Lam and I'm just, that was so long ago. And it's so long ago, it's hard to remember exactly the answer to the questions, but I'm sure it's in the episode somewhere, maybe. So if you're asking questions about old episodes and never respond, it's probably because I can't remember what the answer is to your question.
Our brains can only hold so much information.
I know. Can only hold so much information. But yeah, the John Bonet episodes were obviously huge, but I really enjoyed going through the letter because I feel like so many people will say, and I still see this, that the letter is the reason they think somebody in the family, particularly Patsy, was involved. And they'll look at the handwriting and they'll look at some of the phrases used and they'll say, look, in a Christmas letter, John Bonet, there's the John Bonet letter and they used hints. And then Patsy wrote a Christmas note and said hints. So therefore it's the same person. And it's like, okay, that's, that is a similarity. I'll consider that to be evidence. If she was ever put on trial, that probably would be a piece of evidence that you would admit to try and show that she wrote the letter, though you need a lot more than that to get there. But to me, going through that, and it's just so interesting doing these cases because I sometimes have a general idea of what I think about cases. But I'm usually pretty open-minded until we really kind of get into it. And that was the point for me when I got to the letter and really looked at the letter where I decided there's no way. I didn't think then, and I don't think now, that Patsy Ramsey was quoting Dirty Harry in her letter that she's writing after her daughter has been accidentally killed by her son. Right? Right. I just don't think that happened. And I think if you believe that, it shapes so much of what you have to believe happened. I think honestly, if you think she wrote the letter, you need to think she killed her. Because I don't think you can get to her writing the letter and doing it the way she would have had to have done it, quoting the movies and everything else, if you don't think she wasn't actually responsible for her death.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of putting us back into the mindset, because we are so stuck in the world that we live in right now, where Google is at our fingertips, where you can search any quote by anyone at any time, no matter how obscure. But that was not the case, back in the 90s, when you had to go to Blockbuster and rent these movies unless you owned it, which they did not. And to have watched it enough times to be able to quote in such detail and integrate it into a regular letter was just kind of jarring for me. Because at first I'm just like, whatever, anyone can get quotes from anything. But that's not the case pre-Google. And so when you think about the time invested, she or someone in the family or whoever wrote the letter had to spend watching these movies, it kind of shakes you up into reality of who could have written these letters.
And I think that's really important, because sometimes people will say, well, John was really into movies, so maybe they wrote it together. Even if he was really into movies, basically quoting lines from a movie, that's more than into movies. That's much more the sort of incel type person. No offense to those of you who watch a lot of movies and memorize lines, because I do that and I'm not an incel. But nevertheless, the person, as we said, who's in their parents' basement watching movies.
And it's a type of person too. Like I am terrible with song lyrics and quotes. My brain doesn't hold information like that. I can remember the summaries of things, but in terms of quotes, I used to do terribly in like Sunday school, memorizing Bible verses. And I remember in like poetry class, like AP English, we would have to memorize poetry. And I would just drop out words all the time. My brain just doesn't work like that. Whereas my college roommate, she can listen to something one time and quote it verbatim for the rest of her life. And that's just the skill she has. And so it's also not just the number of times you've seen something, but the type of brain you have. And my roommate that I just mentioned, everyone knows that this is how her brain works, and everything she says, we know she can quote things verbatim. Whereas like no one, if I quoted something verbatim, someone would just think I read it off like a piece of paper, because no one will believe I can quote something verbatim. And so in addition to that, it's the way your brain works and the way you normally speak.
And I just think it says something about the type of person who did it, and the movies they were watching, and the movies they were obsessed with. And sort of like you said, the way their brain works, the kind of perpetrator you're looking for. The letter is it is a massive piece of evidence. It's insane. It's kind of like Delphi in that we have a video, and yet it took us forever to figure out who it was. And in this, you have a letter, a 3-page letter. And I'll just say this. I think if it were Patsy, I don't know that people would be arguing over her handwriting. I feel like if you write a 3-page letter, the police and handwriting experts, to the extent that handwriting expertise, is a science or whatnot, they would all be able to say with a lot of certainty, I think that it was her. And they don't do that. And I think that's important.
That's a really good point. With that amount of evidence, it's kind of like if you're doing a DNA test and you have like a ton of DNA and you still can only have a small percentage that it matches someone, that's not good for you, right? It's if you have very little evidence and you can make a small percentage, that is a more compelling case than if you had a ton of evidence and you could still only make a small case for someone who's so known to the police and the family, Patsy in this case.
All right, Alice. Well, that was one of mine. What is your first
Okay,
one?
I'm going to shock you with this. I don't think I'm going to say this. So obviously it's an ongoing joke, but it's not really a joke because it's real, that I do not like October and all your creepy shows. But one of my favorites from this year was actually the Salem witch trials. I loved it. I loved the whole historical arc from the very, very, very genesis, because it kind of got a slow start and then it built momentum and then it was like a craze for actually a very short amount of time. And it has such an important cultural touchstone for the world, even though it was such a small amount of time. And it was fascinating for me because anyone who I think is interested in social movements and cults and how you can basically turn an entire population thinking something that ultimately in hindsight we're that was crazy. How could you get so many people to buy into a theory that was so seemingly just unbelievable? I think it's a perfect study of how mob mentality is real, and to see how those massive movements sometimes take one tiny pebble to start, and how much damage they can do. So I don't know. I didn't know the whole history until we got into it. And then as we were doing it, I was like blown away with the kind of history repeats itself and why I love history. There's just so much to learn there. So, and I know a lot of people who reached out to us saying they loved it for that. And for those of you who stay away from our October episodes because you are like me, and perhaps you like your regular non-spooky murder and trauma, you should listen to that episode because it was an awesome one. I know you picked that one, Brett, and you love the Salem witch trials, and I am totally bought in. So kudos to you on like really digging in there. And I think kind of unlocking the secret sauce of what started the Salem witch trials. And one thing I loved that you said during that episode was you said that guy in your Harvard law class would always ask, would you have been for or against the Salem witch trials during the time? And everyone would answer, of course I'd be against it. And he was like, I'd totally be for it. Was actually a really poignant moment because we always, in hindsight, think we'll be on the quote unquote right side of history, but that didn't happen in the Salem witch trials, right? Like the momentum was so strong and you couldn't speak up because if you spoke up, they would just burn you at the stake or hang you. And there was like a fear of speaking out. And so the result of that fear was really just going along with the crowd, which I thought was fascinating. So yeah, I bet you didn't know I was going to say that.
I didn't know you were going to say that. That's an excellent choice though. And I was really pleasantly surprised and happy about how many people liked that episode. Because you're right, a lot of people did reach out to us and say things like how much they liked it. And said things like, I wasn't even going to listen to this, but then I did listen to it, and it's one of the best things I've ever heard. That was really, uplifting. So thank you to all of you who said that. And if you didn't listen to it, or if you didn't listen to the October episodes because you don't like them, give it a listen. I think you might enjoy it. I'm not going to guarantee it because some of you are just committed to hating October. I don't understand.
I get it, guys. I get it. It's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a little strange. But, I mean, with the Moonlight, the Texarkana murders, for instance. I mean, we could have done that case.
That's straight up murder.
Anytime. Yeah, we could have done that case any time of the year. Interestingly, in the Talia Grace case, her dad went to trial and was actually acquitted. And this is something we should do a follow-up on because the judge ruled that evidence that she was a child could not come in because as a matter of law, because they changed her age and it had not been changed back, it's a matter of law she wasn't a child, which is just kind of hurt my head a little bit. So they couldn't bring any of that in. And to the extent that on the stand, Natalia could not say that she was a child.
That's crazy.
I mean, it was wild. It was wild. So I don't know. But in any event,
so interesting because it's like denying literally like who she believed she was, which is very counter to usually what a witness is allowed to say. It's always from their perspective, right? And something like age can definitely shade your perspective of events. So we won't get into that right now, but yes, it's
his confession couldn't come in either because it was all about him saying that she thought she was a child. And if it's like, wow. So I don't know. I mean, just sort of a crazy thing. But anyways, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Alice.
I loved it. I loved
it. Of you did. So.
Okay, what's your second one, Brett?
Good. My second one is the Orang Medan.
Oh,
which
boy.
We did with Lidditz Elementary School.
Maybe
that was awesome.
Maybe the best bloopers of all time.
Maybe up there. Not going to relive them now, but yes,
but you guys
there.
should go relive them in our blooper episode.
I mean, it was great. It was great getting to work with the kids. I love that mystery, and I have an update on it. So I was in D.C.
You were
this week, and so I went to the National Archives and spent a day in the National Archives, and it was a really interesting experience being in the National Archives. I'd never really been there before with you, Alice, but
I remember
I was there. Yeah. I was there this time for some personal stuff, the Orang Medan, and they were able to get me all of the deck logs for the Asiatic Fleet, which is what they called it at the time, for all the destroyers. So I actually went through all the logs for all the destroyers.
And
what I learned is, number one, none of them mentioned the Orang Medan, unfortunately. But it's basically because before World War II, being on a destroyer in the Pacific must have been the most boring thing ever. Number one, all they did was they were in port all the time. When they left port, they didn't go anywhere. They just kind of went around the Philippines and went back. Or maybe they did like a fire drill. People were constantly AWOL. I mean, every log was like, this person was AWOL for an hour. They have 20 hours of extra duty. And they were constantly getting like syphilis checks, surprise venereal disease checks happened all the time.
Really?
And they ate a lot of potatoes. That's what I learned from my reading the deck log.
this is fascinating, guys. And like Brett literally went to DC, to the National Archives to do this, which is so great. What did you ask the person who works at the National Archives? Because the public rarely goes in, not because it's not open to the public, but because people just don't treat it like a library. And so, like, were they excited to see you? Were they like, what? Why do you want these logs? Or were they really just so excited to be able to fulfill the request?
I think they thought I was weird, that I wanted to say this stuff, because I'm pretty sure no one had ever asked for this stuff before. It was like that scene in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf is deep in the library with the candle reading the things to try and figure out where the One Ring came from or whatever. I mean, that's what it was like. But basically, I went in there and told them that there was a ship that sank on this date in 1939 is the best evidence we have. And in the first report about it, they mentioned an American torpedo boat, which is what it says. It doesn't say destroyer, it says torpedo boat. And the problem was there were no torpedo boats per se. Like the PT boat came along in the 40s. So destroyer was kind of the closest thing. And we found basically a list of all the destroyers. So there were other ships in the Asiatic fleet. And if I ever go back, and I will do this one day, I'm going to look at some of the logs. Number one, I'm going to figure out which ships were in the area of the Solomon Islands and the Strait of Malacca at the time. Because, as I said, I learned something from this, which is wherever they were based, they really didn't leave there very often. In my mind, naval ships are just always kind of steaming somewhere. You know what I mean? They're always in the water, going somewhere. And that just doesn't seem to be true. They're usually in port. Or at least these were. So I asked that, and we figured out the ships, and then I just gave them a list. And I had an appointment, so they sent me to a little room. And then the guy comes up with a cart, and it had all the logs for 1939. And I just pulled out November, because that was the month, because November like 18th or whatever. And for each one, it just went through it and read like the log to see, not just on that date, but sort of around that date too. And it just became very apparent very quickly it was none of these ships, because they just wouldn't have been anywhere near that. But I went through them all. I mean, I read them all. There are like 19 of them, I think.
So you went through all of it, and does it strike out that the Orang Medan was there, or is it just not enough information because so little happened?
Well, if an American ship responded, it wasn't a destroyer.
Okay.
It was not one of the destroyers. It might have been some other ship in the area. And that's the thing. I'm going to have to do more research to figure out what ships were based places other than the Philippines. Because the Philippines, I mean, they just didn't leave the Philippines very often. So I'm not going to say it's definitive. It was definitely somewhat disappointing that there just doesn't seem to be any indication. I just feel like a destroyer would have been the most likely ship to respond.
Yeah.
Because the other ships they had were submarines. It wouldn't have been a submarine, I don't think. It would have been like a minesweeper. A lot of the ships they sort of stayed in the area too. They wouldn't be out there doing this kind of stuff. That really would have been destroyer type stuff. So I don't know. It's a little disappointing, but at least we know.
Way to go. Good research skills, Brett. Here's a kind of a twist too. I really enjoyed covering Redonda Vaught, the nurse who was convicted. And here's why. I think the story is tragic, and I thought our public policy discussion was really important because it's something that you and I talk about a lot in our prosecuting jobs of, how far we go in medical cases to not basically pour cold water on the entire field that requires an expertise, especially because people's lives depend on it. People's lives depend on, medicine and treatment from doctors. And if people are afraid they're going to get prosecuted for doing their jobs, there could be a real chilling effect on an entire industry that we don't have an expertise in. And kind of the discussion of when you criminalize certain conduct and whether it should be criminalized, even if you can meet the elements. So I think about that all the time, like a philosophical kind of question, and we got to do it with a specific case. And you guys had such good insights, especially those of you who are in the nursing field. There was so much when we covered it. There was so much in the media about it. And I felt like it was difficult to cut through the emotion to get to what was factually true, what was legally sufficient, but then also delve into the public policy. And those were all very different elements of the case and all very important, but it was important to kind of separate out which bucket we were talking about because they would have different results based on if we were talking about public policy or legal sufficiency or factual sufficiency. So I really enjoyed that discussion.
Yeah, and it was really interesting just because people had such strong feelings about it, but hearing the sort of medical view versus the legal view and the debate within the medical view. I mean, we had nurses who were so upset that she had been prosecuted. But then we had other nurses who wrote us and said this was completely negligent, that she should have been prosecuted. So it was really interesting to do. When we did it was just the perfect time to do it. It was right in the middle of it. And I thought it was a great discussion. And I really enjoyed that because of that. I mean, I always like learning new things and hearing from different people. Really enjoyed appearing on Good Nurse, Bad Nurse. Thank you for that opportunity. But no, that was a great case. So good choice, Alice.
Thanks. Okay, Brett, bring us home. What's your third and final favorite? There's a lot to choose from.
I'm going to go with Maggie Long. I really enjoyed doing that case. Yeah, back to two of these are in Colorado. I don't know where you Mountain Time people are. You need to be listening. But no, I like doing it because it hasn't been done that much. So I thought it was important to do. And it felt like a case that should be solved.
Someone was in the house. Someone was in the house when it happened. I mean, this is kind of like the Idaho murders, Moscow murders,
right.
Where it's like a gruesome murder happens and someone's there and someone calls 911, in fact.
And in a similar way, there just should be so much evidence. Even with the fire, there should be so much evidence. And the fact that here we are 5-6 years later and we still haven't solved that case kind of blew my mind. It's also the first case where I ended up talking to the FBI because of it. So I don't know if I told you this. I think I told you this, Alice, but I haven't told the world. We got somebody who reached out to us with a really good tip in this case. I mean, I don't know that it went anywhere or will go anywhere, but when this person contacted us, I was like, you need to talk to somebody about this. Yeah. And as you guys know, the FBI has taken over this case because it falls in their jurisdiction due to the possibility of a hate crime here. And so I ended up talking to the Denver field office about it. And my understanding is they then talked to this person. So, hey, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if anything will come of it, but I think at least that person now feels better because they shared the information they had and the FBI was able to deal with that. But that's one of the reasons we do this, because we hope that somebody out there will know something about these cases and that we'll be able to help bring some closure to some families one day.
Good one, Brett. That's really cool when our podcast life intersects with our real life. Okay. There's so many. This is hard when you have to narrow it down to 3. But of the cases, so I haven't really listed a case yet, but I really loved when we went in detail of the stab wounds in Ellen Greenberg. Kind of like for you, the ransom note in JonBenét. I felt like going through each individual stab wound, which usually they're lumped together, or kind of the scene is described as one, but when you break it down stab by stab and the order that it likely would have happened, but the angles it would have had to have happened, it was so revealing to me. For me, going through it, I just could not see how it could have been self-inflicted. At least all 20 some odd stab wounds. And I know we spent an inordinate amount of time describing these different stab wounds, but I thought that was very important. That's what we'd have to do in a trial, right? You can't lump together all the wounds at once, because each one is affected by what came before it, right? The 19th stab wound is someone who has, if they're stabbing themselves after 18 other stab wounds. So it's not a brand new 19th wound, but rather each one builds upon itself. So it was a very good perspective for me to pull myself out of what kind of circles the internet and to realistically think, okay, stab wound comes one here, but then what is 19? It's carrying all the baggage and the physical harms of the 18 that came before it, and whether that seemed physically possible. And it's one of the cases that I think generates some of the most discussion on our Facebook fan group, The Gallery, which is an awesome fan page, and you guys should go join it because they have such good conversations and we don't run it. But people always bring up Ellen Greenberg every couple of months, it seems, and I always enjoy the conversations. And obviously, the everlasting question of, could that deadbolt have swung into place when you slammed the door, or did someone on the inside close it? Just these mind-boggling questions that I go back and forth on really every single time I think about the case.
And it's funny you mentioned the deadbolt, because we actually had a friend of ours reach out and say that they were staying somewhere that had one of those swing latches and had the experience of the door slammed and the door locked on its own. And they had to get somebody to let them in because the door latch had closed. So hey, that is a great case. That case, more than any case we've done, generated more conversation in our various listener groups, particularly the Gallery on Facebook, than any case we've done. And it still does to this day. And I think you put your finger on it, Alice. It's rare in a true crime case that you can sort of put yourself in the shoes of the potential victim and actually reenact the crime. But this is one where you could do that. And I think people really got into that. I know I found myself doing it almost compulsively as I was researching it. And from what you guys have said, you all experienced the same thing where you would try and do it too. And your husbands and your wives are looking at you like you're crazy. Like, why do you keep doing that? And that's a case that is only going to get more interesting as sort of the legal developments in it continue to go. And I am fascinated to see where that one ends up. And that's one we're going to keep our eye on going into 2023. Well, Alice, I've enjoyed this sort of trip down 2022 podcast memory lane.
I love it, especially because I haven't actually gotten to talk to you very much the last couple of weeks because we've been doing all of these fast reaction Delphi interviews. So I've missed talking to you and just getting to shoot the breeze with you. This is what I love best. This is why we keep doing the podcast, because it's actually fun.
Exactly. It is fun, and we're going to keep doing it. And I think we've got, some great cases for you guys next year. We're going to start the year off with a bang. We got a couple of cases that involve potential wrongful convictions. I know some of y'all are really into wrongful convictions. One of them where there's an actual conviction, and one of them where there was an acquittal. And there's the question of whether or not that person was guilty. So we're going to do those, and we've got some other things lined up. We're going to do some controversial cases, and we're going to do some big cases, just like we always do. So keep sending your requests and your recommendations. We want to do what you guys want to hear, and we're going to keep doing this podcast. We're going to keep doing legal briefs. So we're looking forward. There's so much next year. Who knows, Alice, where we'll be this time next year. I just hope that we are still recording together the next time the new year rolls around.
I have no doubt. Even if no one's listening, I would record with you, Brett.
Oh, well, thank you, Alice. Well, guys, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever, winter solstice, whatever you do, you do you. We've had a great 2022. Thank you for all your support and telling your friends. It's been incredible, and it's all because of you. And we cannot wait to see you in 2023. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the prosecutors. Testing.
So good. So good. I got you. Boom, 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 boom. Did you
Definitely
like that?
seem like you're kind of losing it. Losing it on me?
What? You mean like today or like in general?
Today. I mean, maybe in general. I don't want to overstate things.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. I am messing with you.
Did I not divide these up for the rest of the way?
I guess not.
I guess I'm not. Let's just go back and forth. Is that okay?
I love it.
Stats are great. So, as you know, Alice and people out there, we crossed 10 million episodes, or not 10 million episodes. That'll be a lot of episodes. That'll be a lot of episodes. Some of y'all who complained about not having enough episodes, but not complaining.